Are you looking for a great detective/psychological anime filled with mystery and suspense that leaves you on the edge of your seat? Then you've come to the right place. The psychological genre, when done right, is my favorite. It's so fascinating to watch, making me want to find out what happens next. I love forming my own ideas and coming up with my own conclusions as the story progresses. Now, this anime is no different and is one of the most underrated anime, period. The anime I'm talking about is It Invaded. Invaded has one of the most interesting starts of any anime I've watched, and if the beginning sequence doesn't get you hyped for future episodes, I don't know what will. Before I get into this review, I just want to tell you that this video was voted by my community, so don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy it. It Invaded starts with the main character waking up with his arms stretching out to the sky. Then suddenly his arms break into several pieces, disconnecting from his body as he screams out in shock. He does not remember who he is and must put not only himself but the fragmented world around him back together. After finding the dead body of a young girl, he remembers both who he is and what he must do. He is the brilliant detective Akihito, the girl is Kaoru, and his job is to uncover the mystery of her death. Now, the main character Akihito isn't actually located in the real world, but as a persona within an idwell. Idwells are the product of the unconscious mind and are formed out of murderous impulse, their instinctive drive to kill. Each well is unique to this serial killer. A person in the real world pilots the Mizuhaname, which is the device that helps people dive into a murderer's idwell. And upon diving into a person's idwell, the pilot forgets who they are and everything they know. By doing this, the secretive police organization Kira can discover clues, helping to find out who the culprit is. There is one important fact that is necessary for the pilot of the Mizuhaname. They themselves must be a murderer. So yes, the main character, the brilliant detective persona Akihito, located within Idwells, or Akihito Narihisago in the real world, is a murderer. Akihito is a broken man. He's a former cop, but is now incarcerated, still helping to solve cases. He has been in jail ever since murdering the serial killer who ended up ruining his life 3 years ago. Throughout It Invaded, Akihito dives into several serial killers' idwells, exploring what is causing them to kill and finding out their identity. Each killer has some type of sick modus operandi for their kills. For example, the surprisingly lovable serial killer Fukuda, who drilled a hole into his own head to be free from arithmomania, is known as the Perforator, since he drills a hole into his victim's head. Other examples include the Pyrotechnician and the Gravedigger. I'm pretty sure you can guess what their method of killing is. While diving into various murderers' idwells, there is one thing in common besides Kaoru always being dead. A man usually hiding in the shadows is seemingly pulling the strings of these serial killers, encouraging them to indulge in their murderous impulses. This unidentifiable man, dubbed John Walker, looks old and is seen with a top hat and cane, but you can't pinpoint his identity since his face is blurred out. He pulls a page out of Where's Waldo, because although he always has the same costume on, it's difficult to find him within the unconscious mind of these serial killers. Akihito, with the help of Kira, as well as a rookie female detective with balls of steel and Hondo Machi, and the interesting serial killer Fukuda, yes, the man who drilled a hole into his own head, help bring several serial killers, as well as John Walker, to justice. What's great about It Invaded is that with each killer shown, the viewer gets to see what drove them to kill, besides John Walker's influences on their unconscious minds. Yes, they were influenced, but they still had a choice whether to kill or not. Again, remember what director Momoki says, impulses don't decide action. These serial killers were given an opportunity to kill and seized it. Their idwells showcase something traumatic they have experienced and their philosophy of how they view the world, leading them to be the way they are. The designs of the various idwells, aka the unconscious minds of others as a whole, are also very interesting and cool. Now yes, it is blatantly obvious who John Walker truly is. The chief and founder of Kira, Chief Hayasura, is the man behind developing all of these serial killers. Hayasura has a sense of justice and developed a god complex. In order to get the Mizuhaname system to where it is now, he used it himself, encouraging those serial killers to kill by influencing their unconscious minds. Through his manipulation of a psychic girl named Kiki Asukai, or Kaoru in Idwells, he has set up the Mizuhaname system to a point where he can root out all serial killers throughout the world. It's an idea that's great in theory, being able to provide justice across the world, but he himself is a criminal who made so many people suffer, including Akihito, and created several serial killers in the process. He has the idea that a few deaths is beneficial for the greater good. His god complex is shown through his love of the number 7, with him thinking he himself is a god. He created 7 serial killers, with each killer having a different day to kill on each of the 7 days of the week. Each killer was also only limited to 7 kills before they in turn were either killed or captured. Chief Heiser's god complex devoured his own sense of justice and ultimately led to his downfall. With the combined genius of Hondomachi, Akihito, and Fukuda, they trap Heiser in an Edwell within an Edwell, with zero chance of him ever being a problem again. Id Invaded hits you right in the feels. You have to feel bad for Akihito, who is a great man. Akihito blames himself for his family's deaths. He lost his family to a very sick-minded individual, the same person who he was searching for at his job. His daughter was killed by a serial killer dubbed the Challenger, and his wife took her own life because of that serial killer. Akihito ended up seeking his own form of justice, showing up to the Challenger's front door and ultimately killing him. I don't think anybody can really complain about the choice Akihito made. Now alone in the world, this spirals Akihito into a deep depression after being arrested. While incarcerated, he acts on his impulses, influenced thanks to John Walker. Akihito encourages several serial killers into taking their own life, making it his personal vendetta to make sure nobody else has to suffer like he did. Each time when he is brought back to his prison cell, you can see that he's a bit more broken. Even Fukuda notices this. Akihito wishes that his current life was a dream and then he can go back to living a normal life with his family. When Akihito jumps into the Edwell within an Edwell, he is able to relive his life, one where his family isn't taken away from him. It's a dream come true. He's happy again and feels like he has the chance to change things by saving his family, and by not being sent to jail for the killing of the serial killer, the Challenger. He has invaluable knowledge of what will happen and uses it to the fullest. This fake world seems so real, eventually leading him to think that the horrors that he endured were just a dream. This fake reality eventually comes crashing down after spending 2 years in this fake world, or about 10 actual minutes in the real world. His talk with Hondomachi helps him finally overcome the pain he has endured for the past 3 years. And since we are on the topic of Akihito and who he is, I want to bring up the point that each brilliant detective has a quirk unique to them. Despite not knowing who they are, each brilliant detective acts exactly like they do in the real world. Miyu, aka Hondomachi's brilliant detective persona, specializes in providing others with what they need. It may not be pretty, but she gets the job done, just like she did with the assisted arrest of the perforator and gravedigger cases. As for Sakaido, aka Akihito's brilliant detective persona, his quirk is obviously fatherly love. This is evident when he shields Keiko's eyes from seeing a person burn to death. The best example, though, is every time he sees Kairu's lifeless body, he wishes that he can see her alive just once. He is trying to save Kairu. It's the reason why Kikyu Asakai, aka Kairu, was willing to go back into the Mizuhaname, because of the warmth she felt from Akihito. Despite the immense amount of pain she has constantly suffered, she still has hope that things will change thanks to him. Somebody will come along and eventually save her, and that somebody for her is Akihito. There are some extremely memorable scenes within Id Invaded, but there are 3 specific scenes I want to point out. The first scene is when Hondomachi willingly had a hole drilled into her head. It's why I said she has balls of steel earlier. She helped capture Fukuda with that move, which very well could have ended her life. The scene happens early on, and from that moment on, I knew I was going to fall in love with Id Invaded. The second memorable scene is when Hondomachi shoots at a serial killer that is attacking her, and the bullet goes through the hole in his head. It's such a badass scene. The final scene I want to mention is the fight between Akihito and the Challenger. It wasn't a pretty fight, but the Challenger got what he deserved. Justice. He never fought fair against his opponents, so why should Akihito? It's a satisfying scene to watch, knowing how sick the serial killer who ruined Akihito's life was. Episode 12 was a great episode, just like all of the others, but I want to point out one thing in particular about it. It is dedicated to Fukuda, an interesting serial killer who is a fantastic character, and he helped out tremendously in the anime. Fukuda's favorite number, 3, is shown repeatedly throughout the episode. There are 3 self-inflicted gunshots to Chief Heiser's gut, 3 boulders chasing the Kura members, 3 people killed by trains, 3 wishes granted for Fukuda, and even 3 holes between Detective Hondomachi and Fukuda, each having a hole in their skull, with Fukuda taking a bullet for her, making the third hole. That final conversation they had together was touching. As for the number 3 showing up repeatedly, it proves that this anime pays attention to even the small details, which I love. And while I'm on the topic of Fukuda, I want to mention that the design of his character is super cool. For a long period of time, It Invaded was in my top 10 anime. This was a rewatch for me, and my rating before the rewatch was a 9 out of 10, but does it remain as such? I genuinely believe that this anime could have been a 10 if a couple of changes were made. First change would be to obviously make John Walker look different. Perhaps a younger version of Hayasura, so it's not blatantly obvious who he is. The second thing is to extend the anime 1 to 2 episodes to explain more things and make the ending not as rushed as I thought it was. I still think it's a fantastic show, which I highly recommend you to go watch it for yourself, keeping my rating for It Invaded at a 9 out of 10. It Invaded is an underrated gem that deserves more recognition. If you've watched It Invaded, drop your thoughts about it in the comments. I'd love to hear about it from you. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.